Welcome back to the Daily Roundup. Now we still continue giving you more interviews, and now we are looking at an investigation report which paints a concerning picture of management and governance practices at the national rail operator TransNamib. The report further underscores the state's inability to harness this valuable and a strategic national asset appropriately and optimally. Now, joining us on the line is IPPR's research associate, Frederico Links. Frederico, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, and thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. This revelation, comes as a direct result of a leaked report by auditing and consulting firm Ernst & Young Namibia, which is better abbreviated as EY. Following an independent investigation that commenced in early August 2021. Perhaps just briefly talk to us about the allegations and perceptions of poor governance and mismanagement at TransNamib that actually pertains to this report.
Yeah, so this report was commissioned back in August, or the investigation started back in August 2021 and lasted until February 2022. And after that, the report was handed to the then Minister of Public Enterprises, Leon Jooste, at the end of February last year. And he then subsequently passed it on to the Minister of Finance and then to the board of TransNamib as well. And then later in the year, the Finance Minister, Shimi, also passed it on to the ACC for possible assessment if there was anything to investigate in terms of the Anti-Corruption Act. And then, where we sort of started taking an interest in this, because, this report had been sort of going around, had been leaked last year already, and it came to us via various channels as well, that we were sort of given access to this. And then at the end of end of March this year, there was an article actually in New Era in which it was reported that the board they'd looked at the report, looked at all the allegations, and this is a fairly thick report, and they couldn't find anything that warranted disciplinary action. And they expressed full confidence in the management team at that time, which was still led by Johnny Smith until the end of that month, end of March. And of course, he's moved on since into the private sector. But having seen what was in the report, it just struck us that how could there be nothing in there that warranted some sort of internal action against what were clearly very serious allegations of irregularity and mismanagement. There was even evidence apparently, according to the Ernst & Young investigators, of theft and fraud. So how could there be no grounds for any sort of internal action? So we felt, let's surface some of this, especially the procurement related issues, and just shine the spotlight on this so that people can be aware of what's happening. And it seemed like there wouldn't be any sort of accountability for what the report contained.
Right, and of course you did mention some of the irregularities that were documented, but can you briefly just expand more on this? Just to give us the documented procurement irregularities.
Yeah, so the report especially looks at the relationship between TransNamib and Tradeport Namibia, which is a company that is transporting and exporting manganese through the port of Lüderitz in the south, and making use of the railway to transport the manganese to the port. And there was, this is where the report states that there appears to be solid evidence in terms of the contractual and relationship between TransNamib and Tradeport of theft and fraud. And then also, I mean, there are procurement-related issues in this relationship as well that were flagged as being irregular. And then there were issues related to the management, procurement management around or within the property division at TransNamib. You know, things like procurement of renovations and upgrades and installation of property-related infrastructure that appeared to have been irregularly done. So these were some of the things that were, I mean, these were the sort of, I think, the major procurement-related issues that were flagged in this report, and that where there was, actually a recommendation or observations that pointed to there needed to be action taken against the executives involved.
Right, and just like you mentioned, the report being flagged irregular, despite that, it's still being reported a flagging concern, pertaining to the operational practices of the rail operator. Its chair, who is Theo Mbereira, stated that the report doesn't warrant any disciplinary actions. Why is this the case? And equally, why is it so difficult to take to task, state-owned enterprises on matters of mismanagement?
Yeah, I mean, so look, these things aren't new. I mean, this isn't the first forensic audit or investigation of TransNamib, and not the first one actually that Ernst & Young has conducted. They've conducted a few over the years. But the point is, I mean, if you look back, say 10 or so years, when Titus Mbili was there, and then when Sarah Nanda was there, and then Hippie Chaviko was acting CEO, and now Johnny Smith. I mean, all of those CEOs, the management were investigated and audited under all of those CEOs, and there were issues found. Now, it's similar issues. If you look back at all these reports over the years, these audits and these investigations, it's similar issues, and for them now to still be sort of the board to be taking the view that historically there has been no accountability for misgovernance at this institution, at this very strategic and critical public enterprise, and this is not sustainable. I mean, that's the view that we sort of why we flagged this, and it appeared, from Mbereira's statements that were reported in New Era that there would be no accountability. There doesn't appear to be any sort of consequence management for what was contained in the report, and I mean, it was also mentioned in that report that in the New Era report that the board had done a detailed response and had submitted it to the Minister of Finance of the issues contained in the report. And now our issue is, all right, so if that was done, then these issues should not be treated in secrecy. In other places, when inquiries of this nature are done into strategic public enterprises or public entities, these are public investigations. The reports are made public, but all of this was happen under a shroud of secrecy, and the board and management investigating themselves and exonerating themselves. I mean, this is not how it should be done. Whatever needs to happen here, it should be addressed. If it's being addressed in an administrative manner, it should be addressed at appropriate platforms and in appropriate manners, and not in this sort of secret way. And it appears as if, once again, exoneration is taking place, self-exoneration by the board and by the management, and there would be no consequences for what's contained in this report. And of course, as I mentioned, there would be no consequences for anybody implicated in this report. And so we felt, look, what's happening here is just going to perpetuate what's happened in the past. And there needs to be a line drawn under what's happening at TransNamib once and for all, because this situation is not sustainable. And it has parallels to how eventually Namibia collapsed.
Right.
So, I mean, this is the way, if these issues are not addressed, and if these management practices are allowed to continue like this, then these management and governance practices are allowed to continue like this, then I mean, that's the way TransNamib is eventually going. At some point, it will become unsustainable for government, and it will have to be a decision on its existence will have to be taken.
Right. Now, we do have some little time left, but perhaps just provide us, just briefly what the possible steps are then, or that need to be taken, given the national rail operator that has been battling for years to keep afloat.
Yeah, I mean, so what we propose is that, one of the things we propose is that there be a parliamentary inquiry into this. And we call on the Public Accounts Committee to investigate this and use this Ernst & Young report as the basis for a proper in-depth inquiry into what's happening in TransNamib. And also for the Minister of Finance to make these reports, the report itself, officially, publicly available, and the responses by the board and the management to the allegations contained in the report, so that everybody can see, even if it's in the redacted or edited or summarized form, but that everybody can see what is happening here at political level, and how is this being addressed. We need to be playing open cards now. We can't afford to continue in the same way that we have up to this point with regard to TransNamib, and the way that these governance challenges and issues have been dragging along for more than a decade now. For a few decades now. So this needs to happen. And I mean, we feel there needs to be some sort of process that where accountability needs to be taken for what's happened and what's happening, and that that the implicated persons have to step forward and explain themselves, because as I said, I mean, this is an unsustainable situation that TransNamib is in at this point in time.
All right, Frederico Links, thank you so much for making the time to explain to us the matter that is actually faced by TransNamib, and of course we want to have you more